My name is Alex Mitchell. I'm 37 years old, living in a quiet neighborhood in Indianapolis, Indiana. My life, though simple, is filled with responsibilities. As a single father of two, life has been about balancing the mundane with the extraordinary. I am raising two children, Emily, who is 11, and Noah, who is 7. They are the world to me, and I would do anything to see them smile. We live in a small house, nothing fancy, just enough space for the three of us. It's an old house with creaky floors and walls that have seen better days. Yet, it's home. Our home. It's not much, but it's ours. The furniture is hand-me-downs, and the appliances are ancient, but I try my best to make it a cozy place for Emily and Noah. But life hasn't always been this way. I didn't start out in this small house, in a neighborhood that sometimes felt like it had been forgotten by time. There was a time when I lived in a house with marble floors, high ceilings, and grand staircases. My family wealthy, prestigious, made sure everyone knew who we were. The Mitchell family name was a symbol of success, of power, and of control. My father, Richard Mitchell, ran a multi-million-dollar construction empire. My mother, Elizabeth Mitchell, was the picture of elegance and grace, always at the center of every event, hosting extravagant galas for their social circle. But all of that is a distant memory now. I left it all behind when I chose a different path. A path that led me away from the wealth and expectations my family placed on me. A path that led me to Sarah. I met Sarah 12 years ago, long before everything changed. She was a waitress at a small cafe just outside of Lexington. I had stopped there for coffee one afternoon, taking a break from the usual meetings with clients and investors, and she had caught my attention immediately. She was warm, genuine, and made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. There was no pretense about her. She didn't care about wealth or status, she cared about people, and I found that refreshing. I knew from the moment I met her that she was different from anyone I had ever known. I was supposed to marry someone from a family that could further my father's business, someone who could bring in more prestige, more money, more connections. But all I wanted was Sarah. My family was furious when I told them I wanted to marry her. "She's not one of us," my father had said, his voice thick with disdain. "She's a waitress. She doesn't belong in our world." My mother, ever the elegant and composed figure, simply nodded and agreed with him, her gaze sharp and cold. My younger brother Peter stood silently by their side, as he always did. The Mitchell family was everything to them, and they couldn't fathom why I would give that up for someone who was beneath us. But I didn't listen. I married Sarah in a small ceremony, one that my parents refused to attend. They didn't come to our wedding, and they didn't come to see our daughter Emily when she was born. My family had disowned me the moment I decided to choose love over legacy. I didn't care. I loved Sarah, and I was determined to build a life with her. For the first few years, things weren't easy. Sarah and I worked hard to make ends meet, and we were happy. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I did my best to provide for our family, working long hours in a job that paid well, but left me exhausted. I had big dreams for our future, dreams of a house we could call our own, a life we could enjoy together. But as the years went by, the weight of reality started to set in. Sarah wanted more. She wanted the things that came with wealth, the vacations, the house with a big backyard, the life that we'd never been able to afford. And no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't give her that. I tried to explain to her that we were doing the best we could, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, Sarah left. She stood at the door one day, her suitcase packed, and told me she had found someone else, someone who could give her the life she wanted, someone who had the things I couldn't provide. "I thought you would be my way out," she said, her eyes cold. "But you have nothing." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I watched as she walked out of the door, taking the dreams we had built together with her. She left with a wealthier man, leaving me with Emily and Noah. I fell apart. I questioned everything. Was it my fault? Was I not good enough for her? Had I made the wrong choice by marrying her? But as I watched Emily and Noah play in the living room, I realized that I had to keep going. I had to be strong for them. In the years that followed, I struggled. I worked 2 jobs to provide for my children, doing everything I could to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I couldn't afford to sit around and wallow in my failures. My children needed me, and I needed them. But as hard as it was, a part of me always hoped that one day my family would accept me again. I never stopped missing them, despite everything that had happened. I thought about reaching out to them, to ask for help, to rebuild some sort of relationship. But then I would remember how they had treated me when I chose Sarah. I knew they wouldn't accept me back into their lives. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I came home from work, to find an invitation on my doorstep. It was an invitation to my sister Charlotte's wedding. The first week after I left Vanguard was an odd blend of freedom and uncertainty. I spent hours at my home office, reviewing files, catching up with old clients, and planning my next steps. Despite the unsettling nature of the circumstances, I couldn't shake the feeling of relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't chained to a corporate agenda or constantly at the beck and call of a boss who couldn't see what I was bringing to the table. Rebecca returned from Denver after a few days, and when she came through the door, I knew I had to tell her everything. "How was your trip?" I asked as casually as I could muster. "Good, but the kids are driving me crazy," she laughed, setting her bag down. "What's going on with you? You seem—" She paused, noticing my face. "Andrew, what happened?" I took a deep breath. I wasn't sure where to start, but I figured I had to lay it all out. I told her everything. The sudden restructuring, the firing, how I knew something wasn't right the moment Brian Ellsworth came on board, and how it all unfolded, in just a matter of weeks. Rebecca sat down across from me, taking it all in. "So, they let you go, and now what? Are you going to sue them?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I shook my head, trying to remain calm. "No, I'm not going to fight them in court. I'm not interested in their corporate games. I'm going to rebuild, and I'm going to do it the right way." Rebecca was silent for a moment before speaking again, more softly this time. "You know I've got your back, right? But if you really believe this is your chance to rebuild, I want you to promise me something." She leaned in slightly, her gaze steady. "Don't chase the same thing. Don't go back to the life you had. You've worked your whole life for them, and they treated you like this. I don't want to see you go back into that cycle." The next morning, as I sat at the breakfast table with Sophie and Lily, something inside me felt different. Sophie had woken up feeling much better, and her usual energy had returned. She was bouncing around the house, playing with her dolls as I scrambled eggs on the stove. Lily, who had been quieter since the previous night, sat at the table with a book in front of her, but her eyes were distant, as if her thoughts were somewhere else. The quiet hum of the morning was comforting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things were shifting. It wasn't just the relief of Sophie feeling better. It was the realization that I had been living a double life where I struggled to prove myself at work, and one where I poured every ounce of my energy into being a father to my girls. I had been juggling both, but in a way, I hadn't been fully present for either. It was time to change that. I finished breakfast and sent the girls off to school, making sure to give them both a kiss on the forehead before they left. As I watched them walk down the street, my mind began to race. The work pressure hadn't eased. Travis was pushing me harder than ever. The team was looking to me for leadership, and I was starting to feel like I was losing grip on what I had always valued most: my family. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I had worked for years trying to climb the corporate ladder, trying to prove myself. But no matter how high I climbed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The feeling that no amount of success at work could replace the satisfaction of being a present father. I had to find a way to balance it all, and if I couldn't find that balance, then something had to change. That afternoon, I called Travis. I knew that the conversation would be difficult, but I had reached the point where I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. "Travis," I said when he picked up, "I need to talk." "Sure, Rowan. What's going on?" His voice was as smooth as always, but there was an edge of curiosity beneath the surface. "I've been thinking a lot about my role here, and about everything else," I began. "I'm struggling to keep up with everything. The team needs more from me, and so do my girls. I'm not sure I can keep doing both at the level you expect." There was a brief silence on the other end. "I get it," he said. "This is a big job, and it's not an easy balance. But you've been one of the top performers here. What do you need?" I hesitated. "I need more time at home. I need to be there for my daughters. They're growing up so fast, and I'm missing it. I can't keep doing this 9 to 5 and then running around at night. I want to keep working here, but I need to find a way to make it work for me, for my family." Travis was quiet for a moment, considering my words. Then he spoke. "I can appreciate that. Let me think on it, and we'll figure something out. We'll find a way to make this work." I felt a slight wave of relief wash over me. At least now, I had voiced my struggle. I wasn't sure what the solution would be, but I had to trust that something could change. Later that evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find the girls sitting on the couch, watching their favorite show. Sophie, still energized after her illness, had a big smile on her face, and Lily was quietly reading a book, her concentration absolute. I sat down beside them, exhaustion weighing heavily on me. But as I looked at them, I knew it was worth every bit of effort. How was school today? I asked, trying to start a normal conversation. Sophie, who always had a story to tell, launched into an animated recount of her day. Daddy, guess what? Mrs. Thompson said I'm really good at math. She said I should be in the advanced group next year. I grinned at her enthusiasm. That's amazing, Soph. You're so smart. Lily, who hadn't said much, looked up from her book. Dad, do you think we'll go on another trip soon? She asked softly. I want to go somewhere with you. Just the three of us. The question hit me harder than I expected. It was a reminder of how much they longed for my time, for the kind of attention I could give them if I wasn't so consumed by work. I smiled at Lily, trying to keep the conversation light. We will, sweetheart. We'll figure it out. I wasn't sure how, but I was determined to make it happen. For them, that night I made another call. This time, I reached out to the woman at the local charity who had offered us help a few weeks ago. It was the first time I reached out for support, but I knew I couldn't keep doing it all alone. I wanted to be a good provider for the girls, but I also needed to be there for them emotionally. It was time to ask for help. The charity had been running a mentorship program, and they had a job placement program for single parents like me. After talking to them for a while, I knew this was exactly what I needed. They offered me an opportunity to work part-time with flexible hours, helping others who were in situations like mine. It was an adjustment, but it felt right. I could keep working, but with fewer hours at the office and more time for my family. The next day, I spoke with Travis again, letting him know that I had found a solution. I would still be part of the company, but I needed to step back from the full-time, all-consuming role. Travis was supportive, though I could hear a touch of disappointment in his voice. But I wasn't doing this for him or anyone else. I was doing it for Lily and Sophie. With the change in my work life, things began to shift. I had more time to spend with the girls, more time to help them with homework, to go on walks, to just be present. We went to the park on weekends, we baked cookies together, and I read books with them every night before bed. It wasn't the life I'd expected when I joined the company, but it was the life I wanted now. I still faced struggles, and there were days when I questioned my decision to leave the fast track. But as I looked at Lily and Sophie, I knew I had made the right choice. One day, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set, Sophie turned to me with a soft smile. Dad, I think you're doing a really good job. I looked at her, surprised. Really? She nodded, her face serious. Yeah, you make us happy. In that moment, I realized that the value of what I had wasn't in the title or the money. It was in the love and care I gave to my daughters. They were everything. And in them, I found the success I had been searching for all along. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I held them close, knowing that whatever came next, we would face it together. It wasn't the life I had once imagined, but it was our sand, it was enough. I nodded slowly. I won't, Rebecca. I can't. The next morning, I woke up early. There was no need for me to rush to the office anymore. No meetings to attend, no deadlines to meet. The first thing I did was reach for my phone. I needed to call the people who mattered the most. The ones I had worked with over the years. The ones who trusted me to handle their business. It wasn't just about money. It was about loyalty. And I knew they had to know the truth, before rumors and speculation started to cloud the air. I dialed Travis Hendriss's number first. He picked up immediately. Hey Travis, it's Andrew, I said, trying to sound as calm as I could. Andrew, he responded quickly, sounding relieved. Man, I've been meaning to call you. What's going on with the company? I got the news you left. Are you okay? I exhaled. Yeah, I'm fine, Travis. Honestly, better than ever. I just wanted you to hear it from me directly. I'm no longer with Vanguard. I'm not sure where things are headed for them, but I want to assure you, I'm still here for your business. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Wait, what? You're really gone? But you've been with them for so long, Andrew. What's going on? I took a deep breath. It wasn't my decision, Travis. I've been let go. But the good news is, I'm available, and I'm still here to make sure your needs are met. I want to continue working with you, and if you're open to it, we can find a way to continue the partnership under new terms. No interruptions. There was a pause, and then Travis spoke again. I don't know what to say. You've been the backbone of this company for me, Andrew. I've been with you longer than I've been with anyone else. Let's talk about how we can move forward. We'll figure this out. It felt good to hear him say that. Over the next few days, I made a list of all my top clients, ones I'd worked with for years. I didn't send out any mass emails or make any grand announcements. I knew the relationships I'd built were personal. Each conversation needed to be direct and honest. I was confident that the trust I'd built with them would hold up under pressure. By the end of the week, I had talked to every major client. Each conversation was reassuring, and I could hear the relief in their voices when they realized I wasn't abandoning them. The initial shock had passed, and now they were more focused on moving forward than on the drama at Vanguard. On Friday, I met with a few of my former colleagues, all of whom had been in similar situations. They were all aware of the plans being put in motion at Vanguard. They were angry about it, but there was little anyone could do. The corporate world had already spoken. And for those of us who built relationships from the ground up, the question was no longer about our loyalty to the company, but about where our futures would take us. I sat down with Rebecca that evening, telling her about the conversations I'd had. "I think things are looking up," I said. "I haven't burned any bridges. Everyone seems willing to stick with me. I just need to decide what comes next." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Andrew, you've always been so focused on the clients and the job. But what about you? What do you want? You've worked so hard for them. Don't forget about what you need." I was quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in. She was right. For so long, I had sacrificed my personal life for the sake of my clients and my company. And now, I had the opportunity to finally build something that was truly mine. By the time Monday rolled around, I had a clearer vision of what I wanted to do. I had a few offers on the table from companies that admired the relationships I had cultivated over the years. But I wasn't in a rush to make a decision. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing the next promotion or the next dollar. This time, it was about finding the right fit somewhere where I could keep building something that mattered, not just for me, but for the people who had trusted me all these years. But the truth was, no matter where I went, one thing was certain. The relationships I had built were my real legacy, not the office buildings, not the corporate titles. The people I had worked with, the trust I had earned, that was what I would carry with me wherever I went. And as I sat in my office that Monday morning, looking out the window at the city I had helped build, I knew that I was on the verge of something new, something better. And this time, I was doing it on my own terms. The wedding reception was in full swing, but I felt like I had stepped into a world I didn't belong to. The soft strains of the orchestra played in the background, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the room, but none of it reached me. I felt as if I were standing outside, watching a life I once knew slip further and further away. The judgment from my family was palpable, but I refused to let it ruin the evening for Emily and Noah. I glanced at Emily, her eyes scanning the room, taking in everything around her. She had always been perceptive, noticing the smallest details, and I knew she could feel the tension. I smiled at her, trying to reassure her, but I saw the unease in her expression. Noah, on the other hand, was blissfully unaware. She twirled around in her little pink dress, making everyone smile with her childlike innocence. Her laughter echoed through the room, a bright sound amidst the stifling atmosphere. As I watched her, I was reminded of how much I wanted to protect her from this world, the world that had discarded me, the world that never understood me or the choices I made. As the reception progressed, the speeches began. One after another, relatives and guests took the stage to toast the couple, praising the union of Charlotte and Henry. Each word felt like a sharp reminder of the divide between me and my family. My parents, seated at the head table, exchanged polite pleasantries with their guests, their faces the very picture of genteel composure. They didn't even glance our way. It was as if we were invisible, reduced to nothing more than background noise in their perfect world. The evening dragged on, and I found myself growing restless. I wanted to leave. I wanted to take Emily and Noah and escape the suffocating atmosphere of judgment and expectation. But then, my thoughts were interrupted as the microphone was handed to Charlotte. "Family is everything," she said, her voice ringing out across the room, her smile so practiced, so rehearsed. "But sometimes, we have to make sacrifices for the greater good of the family. We have to protect the legacy and the reputation that has been built for generations." My blood ran cold. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the anger rising up from deep within me. I knew where this was headed. I had known it all along. Charlotte was about to make her move. She turned her gaze toward us, her eyes sweeping across the crowd before finally landing on me. I could feel every eye in the room turning toward us, as if I were being singled out. "And speaking of family, I'd like to acknowledge my brother Rowan," she continued, her tone sugary sweet, though I could hear the sharpness in her words. "He's here despite everything, despite making choices that our parents could never understand. Rowan, you've been through so much, haven't you?" I froze. My worst fears had come true. The room grew silent as Charlotte's words echoed in my ears. She was doing it on purpose. She was drawing attention to me, to my failure, to the life I had built away from their world. My face flushed with humiliation, and I could feel Emily's grip on my hand tightening. She was afraid. Sophie, too, sensed the shift in the room, and looked up at me with her wide, innocent eyes, unsure of what was happening. Rowan, Charlotte continued, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. You chose love over wealth. You chose a life that wasn't handed to you, a life of hardship. You've been raising your two beautiful daughters alone, working day and night to make ends meet. She paused, letting the words sink in. And now, here you are, attending this wedding, clinging to whatever scraps of family you have left. I couldn't breathe. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but I refused to let the tears come. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about Emily and Noah. I looked down at them, trying to steady myself. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for me to say something, to make it stop. But the words wouldn't come. The humiliation was too much. The crowd erupted into laughter, as Charlotte's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. But then something changed. I felt a small hand tug at mine. Emily, my strong girl, stood up from her chair and walked to the center of the room, her small feet patting softly on the polished floor. She took the microphone from the table, her hands trembling but her voice unwavering. I don't want them to laugh at Daddy anymore, she said, her voice loud and clear. My daddy works really hard for us. He's the best daddy in the world. The room fell silent. Every eye in the hall was now focused on my daughter, the little girl who had just exposed the truth to a room full of strangers. Emily stood tall, her voice steady, her words ringing out across the space. She wasn't just standing up for me, she was standing up for herself, for her sister, and for everything I had worked so hard to give them. The silence was broken by a few soft whispers, but no one moved. Charlotte, standing on the stage, was no longer the radiant bride. She was a woman caught in her own lie, crumbling under the weight of her own deception. Her eyes widened with shock, and for the first time, I saw fear in them. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was caught, exposed. Lily, she stammered, her voice shaky. That's not true. You don't know what you're saying. But Emily, small and fierce, held her ground. I'm not lying. I heard you. I know what you said. You're lying to everyone, and Daddy doesn't deserve it. The room buzzed with confusion and whispers. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. But I stood there, watching my daughter with a sense of pride I couldn't have imagined in that moment. She wasn't afraid of the truth, and neither was I. Henry, the groom, stepped down from the stage, his face pale, his expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. He approached Emily slowly, kneeling to meet her gaze. Are you sure about what you said, Emily? His voice was calm, though I could see the storm behind his eyes. I'm sure, Emily replied, her voice steady despite the overwhelming attention. I just want people to stop laughing at Daddy. He's a good person, and he didn't deserve that. Henry nodded slowly, his gaze shifting to Charlotte, who was now sitting on the stage, her face buried in her hands. The wedding had fallen apart in front of us, and there was no going back. Charlotte's secret was out, and no matter how much she tried to deny it, the truth had been spoken. The chaos that erupted in the hall after that moment was deafening. My parents, furious and embarrassed, tried to salvage the situation. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Charlotte's marriage was over before it had even begun. And as I watched Henry walk out of the hall, leaving Charlotte behind, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the failure my family always made me out to be. I felt proud of Emily, proud of my daughters, and proud of the life I had built, no matter how humble it was. We left the reception quietly, walking through the halls as the whispers continued behind us. I took Emily's hand, and as we walked into the night, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth had been spoken, and for the first time, I knew we would be okay. The days following the wedding were a blur. The chaos in the banquet hall had been the kind of spectacle I would never forget, and as much as I tried to focus on the aftermath, I couldn't shake the memories of the looks and whispers. I had expected to feel a rush of triumph, but the reality was far different. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. The world around me didn't suddenly change. The harshness of my reality didn't vanish. Instead, there was an unsettling calm in the air, a quietness that had settled into the cracks of my life, forcing me to reckon with it. I didn't hear from my parents or Charlotte after the wedding. I hadn't expected to. The silence was deafening but not unfamiliar. It had been a constant undercurrent in my relationship with them for years. I had spent so long trying to bridge the gap, hoping that one day they would understand that I wasn't a failure, that I wasn't someone who had thrown everything away. But that night, something had changed. Emily had made a decision for both of us, and the courage she showed had peeled away the years of doubt I had carried. I no longer needed their approval. I was enough. A week passed, and the world outside my small apartment in Louisville continued at its usual pace. Emily was back in school, and Sophie had returned to her preschool routine. Life, in all its chaotic simplicity, had resumed. Yet something was different. I could feel it in the way Emily walked a little taller, how she held her head up a little more proudly. It wasn't just me who had changed, it was all of us. The phone buzzed one afternoon as I sat in the small living room, flipping through job listings. The message was from Travis Hendris, one of the few clients I still had contact with, and the one whose respect I'd earned years ago. He'd been one of the first to call when the news of my departure from the James family's orbit had reached him. He'd stayed loyal, despite the turmoil. "Rowan, I saw the video," the text read. "You've got a hell of a daughter. I've been following your story. Don't let this world make you feel small. You've got something the others don't. Let me know when you're ready to take the next step. We've got work to do." I smiled, feeling a sense of warmth flood through me. Travis had always been one of the good ones, someone who valued integrity and honesty over status and wealth. I had no doubt he was offering me a lifeline, but part of me hesitated. I wasn't ready to dive back into the world of corporate games, of contracts and clients and backroom deals. I didn't want to leave my girls behind again, but I also knew that Travis wouldn't give up on me. That evening, after I had put the girls to bed, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the weight of the decision settling on my chest. I hadn't expected to find myself at this crossroads. I thought I'd left all that behind. But Travis's offer, it wasn't just about the money. It wasn't about climbing back to some corporate summit. It was about respect. It was about finding a way to provide for my family while also staying true to who I had become, a man who had nothing to prove to anyone anymore. I thought about the world I had left behind, the world of my parents, of Charlotte, and all those people who had judged me. I remembered the laughter at the wedding, the coldness of my family's gaze, and my mother's words. "You chose to abandon everything." But it wasn't an abandonment. It was a choice, to live honestly, to live for my daughters. The next day, I called Travis back. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady. "Good to hear, Rowan," he replied, sounding relieved. "We'll get things moving. This time, it's on your terms." We spent the next few weeks ironing out the details. Travis had the power to make things happen, but it was clear that this wasn't just another business transaction for him. He was offering me a partnership, an opportunity to step into a world where I wasn't just a salesman, I was a key player. It was the kind of opportunity I hadn't expected, but it felt right. I would work hard for it, but this time, I wouldn't be doing it for the approval of others. I would be doing it for my girls, for Emily, for Sophie. As I drove to meet him one afternoon to finalize the deal, I couldn't help but think about the conversations I'd had with my daughters in the weeks since the wedding. They had been a constant source of strength for me, reminding me that everything I had done, the struggles, the sacrifices, the hardship, had been worth it because of them. They were my light, my purpose, and as I drove through the streets of Louisville, I realized that no matter what happened with the deal, my worth was never going to be tied to what my parents thought of me. It wasn't about the status, the name, or the wealth. It was about the life I was building, piece by piece, with my own two hands. When I walked into the office building that afternoon, Travis greeted me with a handshake and a smile, his eyes reflecting a mutual understanding. "Welcome aboard, Rowan," he said. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I know you're the right person for it." I smiled back, shaking his hand firmly. "Let's get to work." The months following my decision to join Travis at Grantley and Company weren't easy, but they were exactly what I needed. It felt like the weight of 1,000 expectations had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The long nights of juggling two jobs were over. I didn't have to beg for respect anymore, or fight for my worth here. In this new world, I was recognized for my skills, my loyalty, and the genuine relationships I had built over the years. But the transition wasn't seamless. There were days when I still felt like an outsider, even though I had a seat at the table now. In many ways, I still didn't quite fit in. I wasn't used to working in a polished corporate environment with people who wore expensive suits and talked about mergers and acquisitions over lunch. I wasn't used to sitting across from board members who discussed billions in revenue and projected profits for the year. The world I had come from was far removed from this one. Yet, The more time I spent there, the more I realized that the men and women in this world weren't any different from me. They had families to support, dreams they were chasing, and fears they tried to hide. The difference was the opportunities they had, the resources at their disposal, and the reputation that made it easier for them to climb. Travis had always been a believer in making things work for people who earned their place. He'd built his career on nurturing talent, not just taking advantage of it. It was one of the reasons I had decided to join him in the first place. He didn't look at me as just another cog in the wheel. He saw me as someone who could make a difference. But even with his support, there were challenges that I wasn't prepared for. The first of those came when the company started focusing on a series of high-profile acquisitions. We were competing with some of the biggest firms in the industry, and things were getting heated. The pressure from above started to mount, with higher expectations for every executive. The new clients I had brought in from Trevant and my previous clients started to get swallowed up by the massive demands of the company's larger projects. In some cases, they became secondary to the bigger fish that Grantley was chasing. I found myself fighting harder to keep my clients happy, while also balancing new responsibilities at the company. On top of that, Travis began pushing me harder, expecting me to take more ownership of the direction of the sales team. "You're more than just a closer now, Rowan," he said one day in our weekly meeting. "I want you to lead. It's time to step up and show everyone what you're capable of." I wasn't sure how I felt about that. On one hand, I appreciated the challenge. On the other hand, I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that next step. I had just spent years fighting for my place in this world, and now, it seemed like I was being asked to take on even more responsibility, more pressure, more stakes. It was one thing to have a portfolio of clients to manage. It was another to lead a team and make high-stakes decisions that could affect the future of the company. I didn't know if I had it in me, but there was something about Travis's faith in me that pushed me to try. I spent hours outside of work thinking about what I could do differently, how I could lead the team without losing sight of the values I had always held close. I wasn't like the other executives in the company. I didn't care about making a name for myself or earning accolades. I wanted to provide for Emily and Sophie, to show them that hard work and honesty were enough to succeed in this world. I wanted to prove to myself that I was capable of doing more than just surviving. One day, as I was leaving the office late in the evening, I got a call from Emily. Her voice was light, but I could hear the concern behind it. "Daddy, are you coming home soon?" "I'll be there soon, sweetheart," I replied. "Just finishing up some work." "Okay," she said, her tone brightening a little. "Sophie and I made cookies. We're waiting for you." A smile tugged at my lips. It wasn't the first time they had tried to surprise me with cookies, but it was the first time I truly felt like I had something to come home to. It had been a long, exhausting day, and all I wanted was to see their faces, to hear their laughter and know that we were together. When I got home, I was greeted by Sophie running up to me, her face smeared with flour, holding out a plate of cookies. "We made these just for you, Daddy," she said, beaming. I ruffled her hair, feeling the weight of the past few days lift, even if just for a moment. Emily followed her, holding out another plate. "I'll help you with the dishes later," Emily said, but I thought we could sit and eat cookies first. The simple joy in their eyes made everything else fade into the background. Here, in this moment, I didn't have to be an executive. I didn't have to worry about whether or not I was living up to anyone's expectations. I was their father, and that was enough. But as much as I tried to focus on the positive, the pressures at work were becoming harder to ignore. Over the next few weeks, the acquisitions and the responsibilities that came with them started to pile up. Travis's expectations grew, and the team began to buckle under the pressure. I started losing sleep, worrying about how I could juggle everything and still make time for my girls. The balance between my work and my personal life felt like it was starting to tip in the wrong direction. One day, while I was in the office, a call came in from Sophie's school. It was the middle of the afternoon, and my heart skipped a beat. Something wasn't right. I excused myself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway to take the call. The voice on the other end was calm, but there was an undertone of concern. "Mr. James, this is Miss Parker, Sophie's teacher. I just wanted to let you know that Sophie has been feeling unwell today. She's complaining of a headache and nausea. We've taken her to the nurse's office, but I thought you might want to come and pick her up." The world seemed to stop for a moment. I didn't care about the meetings, the clients, or the demands of work. I didn't care about anything except my daughter. "I'll be there right away," I said, my voice shaking slightly. I grabbed my things, barely registering the rest of the day's events as I rushed out of the office. It was the first time since starting this new chapter that I felt like I had lost control. Work was piling up, responsibilities were growing, and my daughter-me little girl was in need of me. As I drove to the school, my mind raced with worry. Was it just a headache, or was it something more? I thought about the days when I was a warehouse worker, when things felt simpler. I thought about the times when I worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Back then, I never questioned my choices. But now, as the pressure mounted, I wasn't sure if I could handle everything. When I arrived at the school, I rushed into the nurse's office, my heart pounding. Sophie was sitting on a cot, pale but awake. She looked up at me, her wide brown eyes filled with uncertainty. "Daddy," she whispered, "I don't feel good." I knelt beside her, taking her hand gently. "It's okay, sweetheart, I'm here. We're going home now. You're going to feel better soon." But as I held her, I realized something. This wasn't just about her feeling better, it was about me figuring out how to balance the life I had chosen. Work was important, but so were my daughters. I couldn't let myself drown in the demands of the job, not when they needed me more than ever. That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, I whispered, "I'm always here for you, sweetheart, no matter what." And for the first time in a long time, I realized that the true balance wasn't about dividing myself between work and family. It was about bringing my whole self to both. My worth wasn't defined by the numbers, or the title sit was defined by the love I gave and received, and that was enough.